Welcome back to the Community Review on Hot 92.3. I'm Josefa Salinas, your host. We are here today with someone who is a very special friend. He has been here many times on the show. And right now, his department is under a huge spotlight here in Los Angeles. Some of it for good reason. Other of it, could it be media hype? Could it be the desire for ratings? Could it be overblown situations? I don't know. That's why we brought him in here today, to talk about what's going on in Los Angeles in our county jails, what's going on with AB 109. Is it the big bad wolf that we all think that it is? What is the real deal happening in the Los Angeles County jail system? So there's no better person to go to than Sheriff Baca. Good morning.
Good morning, Josefa. Thank you for having me on your show.
Well, happy Hispanic Heritage Month.
Yes, indeed.
It is. We're celebrating that for sure. Now, tell me, Sheriff Baca, let's deal with some things right off the bat. There's a lot of things going on in the paper about the department. There was a sting operation. You got that. You've got allegations of, let's say, overuse of power, physical power in the jail.
Some brutality by deputies.
Brutality. Just a kind of a bad image right now that perhaps some of the education that is going on there isn't servicing everyone. I know there's a big issue about special needs at one point. So let's talk about some of these things. Let's deal with the most important one, because it's the one that's on top of everyone's mind now, because you just heard about an inmate that was, I think he was struck in the head by a sheriff and then a while later died. Then you've got some other issues of the sting operation. What's going on in the jail with these deputies and people who are in place to take care of the inmates that are in jail?
Well, a lot of things are going on. There's 9 major jails, ranging from an old one, the one that was built in the late 50s, early 60s, the main central jail. Then we have the Twin Towers that are new and more modern. And then out at the Wayside on Rancho, we have a correctional facility out there, 3 of them actually, that are very functional and less controversial. But most of the problems center around the old central jail, and some of the problems center in the mental health section of one of the towers. So when you look at the whole of the system, parts of it are operating very well. Other parts, like the old jail, are in need of more scrutiny and supervision. And the reason is many. It's a different class of inmates there. They have a higher security risk. They have a lot of anxiety, depression, and stress. Yet at the same time, they have a code of self-respect amongst themselves. That's how they get along. And when deputies encounter infractions that inmates might commit, then the inmates, as I've learned from them in having my town halls with them, say that they're being treated occasionally with disrespect by the deputies. And that, to me, is unacceptable. The whole point of deputies' job is to ensure that, 1, the inmates are safe, 2, that they're secure, that they're able to somehow survive within the system, that their medical care is taken care of, that their mental health needs are met. And then when you get to the actual issues of the things that the inmates themselves are concerned about, the deputies have to have more of a service-minded operational modality for themselves, so that they're not ignoring additional blanket need, longer shower times, being able to get the mail sooner, having a sense of what is it for an inmate to be an inmate. And that's part of the whole dynamic here, which leads to 3 things. I have to look at our policies, I have to look at the supervision, and I have to look at the training aspects as to these deputies. There's 2,000 deputies supervising directly 15,000 inmates at any one time. And then the dynamic is there's a lot of movement. Any one facility, like the old central jail, has about 8,000 prisoner movements internally for various reasons, hospital, visiting, therefore. So it's not as though everyone's locked in the cells. So when you put all that together, health care, mental health care, individual needs, and then the rules that inmates are required to follow, and then the dynamic of the deputy trying to enforce the rules, all that leads to occasional conflict, then the force.
So how do we go about addressing some of these issues? Now, I heard you mentioned town hall meetings with the inmates. I think that that's incredibly innovative of you to actually sit with the inmates and talk with them and find out from them what their complaints are. Because organizations on the outside, the ACLU and all these other people can jump up and down all they want. They're not inside the jail. They're not living and walking the walk. When you take the time to sit and talk with the inmates, you actually hear some of these complaints. What are some of the complaints that they're talking about that you feel are necessary to address?
Well, that's really a great question. Now, 3 of the inmates had medical needs that were not being addressed in a timely fashion. They were worried because they hadn't seen a doctor in a recent period of time. One had a cancer diagnosis that needed to be continually examined to make sure to what degree is this cancer becoming more problematic. Another one had a cyst on his back that wasn't addressed, and he was worried about it. He really thought that it should be removed. And then a third inmate had a circumstance relative to a broken arm. He was in a sling, and yet his clavicle was starting to protrude at the upper part of his shoulder. And in that respect, it really needed to be looked at immediately. So by my being there, my staff were able to document and take down their names and their booking numbers, and within a day, we were able to get them those services. At the same, that moving from medical into the elements of high bail. I mean, a lot of them are high bail. Some of them have $1 million bail. Some of them have $500,000, and they would like to see something done about that so that they can move into another aspect of perhaps even bailing out. But I understand why it's a high bail. A couple of them were murderers. When I was talking about having education programs for them, a lot of them want the education-based incarceration program. It's called a merit program with life skill training and adult dialogue. Others are a little ambivalent about it. Many of them had not finished high school, but would like to. The ones that are heading up to state prison because they committed murders felt, what's the use of having education? Part of my reason for the town hall meeting is to encourage them to see life as a continuum and not to look at life as merely just what's going on in a jail environment. And education opens up many avenues of journeys for them so that they can tolerate the problems of being incarcerated as a whole. And of course, we talked about the relativity of stress, anxiety, and having forms of depression. And I believe that this is a very important part of how when we treat them right, they feel like they're more of a human being. Being incarcerated in a cell, even if it's 4 minutes in a cell, is really not a very positive experience. And I have to commend these inmates because they're making the most out of it. And they're willing to go along with what we're providing in the way of care. But they need more blankets when it's too cold in the cell. They need better showering time when it comes to the showers. They need even some cleaning materials so that they could clean up their cells a little better, because some of them would like to have a little more sanitation in the cells. So when you get right down to it, it's a community. And what I learned in meeting with them, and what I'm trying to teach my deputies and my management staff, is that we got to treat this whole process like a community and deal with the small things that lead to big things.
So how do we get, because I've worked inside juvenile hall. I was a juvenile probation officer. So I have an understanding of what it's like to be on that side, to be a part of the staff.
Yes.
And you can get burnt out. There can be one inmate that can ruin it for the whole group by making the day absolutely impossible, so everybody's on lockdown. The whole day's ruined. Or somebody does something that causes you to have to write a report. And I mean, it's just, there's a lot of things that after a while you kind of get burnt out. What kind of system can be put in place, do you think, or have you thought about that? I'm sure you have, as innovative as you are.
Yes.
To start looking at staff and when they might be reaching the point of being a little burnt out, and maybe moving them or addressing those issues so that that level of burnout doesn't then get taken out on the inmate?
You know, that's a great question. And let me tell you, I've had essentially up until I got elected 2 careers. I was a teacher in various schools, and then that gave me another job, so to speak. So I taught middle school, high school, adult school, community college, state university, and private university. I think the widening of the role of working with inmates has to occur. In other words, we hire in specialists that are teachers, and we hire in various social workers. But the key is a deputy has to be a social worker and a teacher, as well as a security representation. And when you enrich the job, I found that inmates are outstanding students. First of all, we have perfect attendance.
Yeah.
But the key is adult offenders. When you get them in our merit program, we've had thousands graduate from it. They not only feel like they're being productive while they're incarcerated, they look forward to getting out. They're renewing relationships. They're dealing with their issues the positive way. And inmates essentially have all have something in common. They have small to large degrees of negative thinking. And then the goal of the teacher, obviously, is to give them the tools to get into the positive side of thinking, giving them sense of hope that your life isn't completely thrown away just because you're in jail, that we want them to work towards the release in a manner that we can back up their success while they're in our hands. And what is difficult and frustrating for me is that, the media has their orientation as to the use of force issues and totally bypass all the things that we have been doing to help these inmates live a better life. And there's an imbalance. And naturally, I'm to blame for all what's wrong.
Of course. But
never given credit for what is good. And that's okay. I understand the nature of the pressures of press. Don't want to get in a fight with them. But what I'm doing by doing these tours, I'm finding that more and more television media is interested in the positive, and they're willing to go in and see how that positive is evolving and hear what's going on between me and the inmates and my staff and the inmates. So as I go back into the jails, I will continue these town halls, but then the key to it is not just one town hall in one jail. What you have to do is have a town hall for each living block where the inmates are. And that way, every inmate has exposure to a town hall. And it should be something that hopefully when we look at all the logistics, it should be hopefully no less than one every 2 weeks. If I could get it down to one a week, that would be better. But we cannot afford not to have an open channel of communication with the inmates. Now, what was interesting, the inmates talked about respect. And they said, we have a code amongst ourselves that we'll treat ourselves with respect, and when we get out of line with each other, you're going to expect there's going to be problems. But one guy can mess it up, as you indicate in your particular commentary. So we're in this discussion about the merit program, which is life skills program, and a young 19-year-old who was the youngest in the group was so excited he wanted to be in the program. So he couldn't contain himself, and he walked over to the older inmate that was extolling the program, and he said, I want in that program. I want to know how to get there. Well, interestingly, after all the meeting was over with, a group of inmates in meeting with the captain said a day later, this young man that got up, it's a problem for us because he disrespected another inmate who was talking to the sheriff, and then he disrespected the sheriff. And there's some guys got a little upset about this, and they want to do a retaliation on him. So that was a tip-off that was important for us, and we removed the young man from that cell block. You see, talking with inmates is not hard to do. Listening to inmates is not hard to do. So when you talked about the career, burning you out and so forth, one skill I have, and I believe this is the ultimate skill in changing anything, is that you have to enjoy listening to people, and you have to be willing to instruct them. You have to have something to give them a better place to go to in their mind. And that's what I do. I will never give up on an inmate. I will never give up on a community. And I will never give up on an individual. People today do not need cynical leaders, authority figures who are only interested in authority. They need people who show concern for their plight and will use their authority to encourage them to keep up the good fight, to be a better human being. And that's what I do. I'm not someone who just is purely a manager. Managers are very good. I can do that. I've done that. I'm a policymaker. I'm a person who sets the tone, and I'm a person that gives direction. And that's how I manage. But I can't do it if I'm not down in the jails. But I have others doing this with me. I have a huge team of commanders. By huge, I mean 4. They're totally independent with 6 captains, and I'm going to add more in, and they're going to report directly to me because my number one deficiency in the system is bureaucracy does not communicate well in a vertical chain of command. So I got to flatten the organization from my office to the problem.
That tends to be a problem in most organizations. We have problems like that right here in radio, and I'm sure they have it in TV, in schools, in your home. If you can't reach mom and dad and the brothers and sisters are fighting and they can't get to the commander-in-chief, which is mom or dad, there's a problem in the house. So these kinds of problems exist. And it's wonderful that you have decided that some of that red tape has to be taken out so that the problem can reach the solution much quicker.
And I hope to find a moment of place and time, since I've always worked 2 jobs until I got elected. I've got to get in there and run a class. Okay, if I do a class 1 day a week for 2 or 3 hours with the inmates that want to be a part of the class, I think that sets the tone for everyone else in the system, that I'm committed to the welfare of these inmates. They're my responsibility, and I'm going to ensure to it that they get 2 things: humane treatment and education.
So education is a very important thing for you.
Well, no doubt about it. You know, all of us can shove education aside, especially when we become adults. But I recognize this when the inmates that were not enthusiastically embracing education is that they've had bad experiences with it. You know, they haven't completed certain school levels, and their experiences in the classroom have defeated their confidence that they can overcome those deficiencies that they've had in class. The psychology of dealing with an inmate is to take him in small steps, or her in small steps, building back spelling skills and literacy, some mathematical skills, and show them that they have a good mind. It's just that I know one thing: when you're growing up in a tough neighborhood, your emotions are so overwhelming that you can't concentrate. You know, when you're going to class, you're numbed out with the whole life experience, and you're not able to just vacate your mind and allow for new information to come in. Those emotional turbulences are things that anyone that's been in a tougher environment can experience it. And I certainly had that myself, so I'm not just talking about somebody else. But when you're dealing with too many issues at home and on the street and with friends, and you're in conflicts of various types, you're not going to have that easy a road in school. So those are things most inmates can relate to, you see, and what they need is they need to just express their frustrations, express the things that make them more fearful. And education is sometimes for an inmate a fearful journey, because they don't want to be reminded of failure. So they'll bypass it and do whatever they can now.
Well, I think that this is the beginning of some incredible dialogue with you. I would love to have you back to really talk about what's going on in the jail, to talk about this community involvement that you'd like to see happening in the jail. And then just to be able to continue to update people on your town hall meetings with the inmates. I'm hoping that you're having town hall meetings with your deputies. Find out complaints, what's wrong.
Oh, yes.
What do you feel you need more of to be able to do your job better?
Absolutely.
And how can we make you do your job better? So I know that you're doing that as well. And most of all, just to allow you to have an opportunity to speak your mind about what's going on so that people can hear from you, because all they hear is what someone is writing. And like you said, a lot of those people never come out of their office and come down to the jail. They're writing from way over here, and it's very easy to get an opinion way over here, but those opinions need to be backed up with fact. And that's why I invite you and encourage you, please come back, share your ideas, share your innovations, share your frustrations, because it's going to be frustrating. Change is always frustrating because people get used to doing something a certain way. And when you want them to change, it can be difficult to get them to move in a different direction. But I firmly believe that if anybody can make a change happen in LA County jail system, it's you.
Well, thank you, Josefa. It's been a delight to be on your program. And this has been a real morale booster for me and the Sheriff's Department. Thank you.
Well, next time what we're going to do is hopefully get some people to call in with questions. How about a number? If somebody is actually interested in taking one of these community positions and coming in and being a part of really getting involved with this change at the Sheriff's Department, where would they call?
Area code 323-526-5000. That's my office.
So 323-526-5000. If you've got some questions, some suggestions, is there a website for the Sheriff's Department?
You can also email me at ldbaca@lasd.org.
Okay, one more time with that.
That's ldbaca@lasd.org.
Good, and I'll make sure that this phone number and email address is up on my webpage. And This is just the beginning.
This is just
of
the beginning.
Many more dialogues. I say we do it once a month until we've got the community and everybody really feeling like they are a part of this change. Because with 17,000 inmates?
15,000 inmates,
15,000
but it may
inmates.
go up to 20,000 with the realignment. So we're in a real interesting, precarious place. And I think the inmates are even concerned about that.
Oh, I'm sure they are. They have to be with overcrowding already. And they're like, wait a minute, you're sending more in here? So our next discussion is going to be AB 109 because it just started at the beginning of October. So when we have you back, we can really delve into AB 109, what the realities of it are. You'll have been a month into it at that point. How is it affecting the jail? What are the problems? What are the issues? And how are we all going to be a part of solving this problem?
Thank you so much.
Well, I always say that when there is an issue that is controversial and everybody's talking about it, there's no better way to get to the truth than to go to the actual source. That's why we had Sheriff Baca on today, and we will have him on again. We're going to continue talking with Sheriff Baca so that he can continue to keep us informed from his perspective, from the inside of the jail, what's going on, how he plans on fixing it, and then he actually is going to let us be a part of helping fix the problems. If you want to be a part of the committee of community members that will be involved in changing incarceration in Los Angeles County, make sure you call that number. Go to my webpage at hot923.com, keyword Josefa. The links are there to get in touch with the sheriff. You know what? It's our county. It's our community. If you have a gripe about a situation, then be a part of the solution. Don't just sit around talking about a problem, talking down a situation, talking down a person. Get yourself involved and be a part of that solution. Coming up next, it's the Pulse of the Community on Hot 92.3.